All right, so now we're going to do a little short bit on just trench warfare in general. Scott has some amazing artifacts here that he's going to talk to us about, especially some of these interesting pieces here. Scott, I'll hand it over.
Okay. Life in the trenches was terrifying, absolutely terrifying for brief periods of time. And then you were faced with hours and hours of boredom or forced labor. And so it was a very miserable place to be. Some of the conditions were terrible. You can see in the graphic behind the image of no man's land. There's mud everywhere. There's raw sewage everywhere. Everything drains into the trenches because they're at a lower level. Rats are everywhere. The smell of dead bodies is everywhere. It's really a terrible place to be. And there were different tools that were developed for life in the trenches, both for staying alive as well as cooking, sleeping, maintaining hygiene. So we'll start over here on the far edge here. These are just examples of items that are shrapnel and bullet struck. And you can see a couple of American helmets, one which has a bullet, which you could see was a near miss. It came in and then exited under the rim. This is more of a catastrophic, probably a shrapnel strike. And you have a couple of personal items that have been struck. The silver item on the left is a shaving kit, and a piece of shrapnel struck that and stopped only because it impacted the razor blades, which are hardened steel, so it couldn't penetrate those. And then the clip is actually from an officer's .45 automatic, and you can see that was struck. We don't know if it was still in the pistol when it was struck or if it was just in a belt pouch. But these are daily happenings. Here we have some shrapnel here. It doesn't look very scary, but the pieces would range in size from smaller than a pea to the size of a human leg. And when they came off of the shell at extreme velocity, they were designed that when they fractured, the edges are razor sharp. So a piece of shrapnel like that, even as small as that, could take your arm off. Something like this could cut a man in half. So it was, they don't look very scary, but they were, you can see there, that man over there, that soldier holds his helmet, a piece of shrapnel went through, and luckily for him, it didn't impact his head, except on a surface wound. You can see his head's wrapped. Coming over here, one of the areas that was one of the worst parts of a soldier's existence in World War I were body lice. Body lice were nicknamed cooties, and this is a poster printed in France, and actually is sort of a public notice about watch out for cooties, how to take care of yourself, what do you do if you have them. And you can see some of the postcards are actually showing soldiers actually itching or going through their clothes to remove body lice. So that was something that was another thing that added to the misery. Soldiers were always looking for things to entertain themselves. The YMCA was great. We mentioned earlier the cigarettes and the little mini books. Well, they also made things like this. This is a set of trench checkers, and they would give these out. They're very cheap paper. You'd have a little cardboard board with little cutout discs where you could play chess or checkers. It was also popular that soldiers that had some type of artistic talent to sometimes scratch or engrave designs into things like mess gear. And you can see these two mess pans have some fairly elaborate designs. And then they took a canteen and they put a German insignia on that. But again, things just to pass the time. As we come this way, we sort of a mix of personal grooming items. You have trench mirrors, toothbrushes. This is a mini deck of cards carried in a little laxative box. Miniaturization was always best because you had to carry everything. But religious items, this is kind of a neat thing. It's got a little folder with the man's girlfriend. You have survival in the trenches, as you can see the trench here. They would typically be a little bit above head height. So maybe 7 feet was sort of ideal. And you didn't want to stick your head up above the parapet of the trench. So a variety of periscopes, including this fixed wood one here. And then over here you have one that's actually collapsible with its carrying case. And then this one right there is made by a company that made binoculars and telescopes and stuff, and it's prismatic, and you would hold that up. So again, these are survival items. Gas was always present, so you have an original gas warning label that was actually be applied to the walls of trenches or trees. And if mustard gas had been used in the area, even if the gas had dissipated, if you made physical contact with it,
Right.
touched the ground, then touched your face, you could be in a lot of pain. And so it would warn you, don't stop here, keep going. He also mentions the respirator. Here we have a small box respirator. And then there we actually have the carry case for it. And what's interesting about it, it actually has a little poem on it. And it says, roses are red, violets are blue. The Huns use gas, so I use you. Hun being, of course, a reference to Germans. They had other things to keep them busy. They had small cooking stoves. You can see here, there's a small alcohol stove.
Right there.
You could heat up some soup in that. In addition to the rations they would get, they also could buy some of their own rations. So some of the men would have maybe a can of soup with them or something like that, or maybe some coffee that they would want to boil up.
Mm-hmm.
So they would have something like that with them. This is actually a gas alarm. If somebody noticed that gas shells were dropping, they would take that. It's kind of like the old-fashioned party clackers. It's very loud when it goes off. We have some additional things over here. This little mirror actually is designed to fit on the tip of a bayonet. And you put the bayonet on the rifle, you hold the rifle up and use the mirror to angle back so you can see if there's anything going on out there.
Okay.
So again, without sticking your head out. Communication at that point was pretty rudimentary. Obviously, there were no cell phones. Radio was in its infancy, so most communication had to be done on a hard line. And there were small switchboards like this one that could be easily picked up and moved around, and then you would set up lines that would go to artillery positions or various dugouts where commanders were stationed. This is one variety of field telephone, a lightweight model with a leather case and a shoulder strap. This is called a trench buzzer, and this is a combination of a telegraph with a detachable microphone, and you would obviously tap out signals.
Yep.
Some other things here. You could see a little candle stand that's commercially made that was sold to soldiers. So you could, if you were in you're in an underground dugout, you at least would have a candle to have some basic light. You can actually see this one. They took actually a French Army drinking cup, turned it upside down, and soldered a collar on it, and then they put a candle in that. So that was actually theoretically you could consider it a form of trench art.
Right. Right.
Barbed wire was another big issue. Barbed wire was everywhere. This is an example of German barbed wire, and you'll notice how close the barbs are together.
Yes.
It was miserable stuff. It wasn't the kind of thing that you could just grab with your hand and pull up out of the way. You had to cut with wire cutters.
Yeah, French wire, there are less barbs.
Correct.
on them. Yeah.
You can see that two-handed wire cutter was a very common thing to use, especially on trench raids. You would have to go out and cut a pathway through so that a raiding party could then follow. In many cases, you would actually have somebody cutting the wire, another person would be towing behind them a 1-inch cloth strip that would be maybe 100 yards long, and they would carry it with them and tie it off after they cut through. So when they had to move up, they could just follow the cloth tape and find the holes in the wire. Right. But yeah, this is really a good sampling of the kinds of things that your average doughboy would be using on a daily basis. You can see it looks like a sunny day,
Right.
but you look at their feet, covered with mud. The duck boards are covered with mud. You can see that area frequently floods. You can see how the water damage and the mud all over the boards. It was a really rough place to be.
Yeah. Rough existence, like very I'm looking for what, like very primitive.
Very primitive, like you're
exposed.
living like animals to the ground.
Yeah. Wow, incredible, Scott. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.